So in today's tutorial, I am going to walk you through a process of editing this image that I took last year in Kenya. This particular picture, we had not even a minute to a minute and a half. I think this eagle flew in and it sat around on a branch and then it flew off. And I managed to get it when it was looking straight down the barrel of the lens. So I was really, really happy. So I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to make this black and white and I'll explain why in a minute. So to start with, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the new generative AI tool, which is up here. There's the first one in, and we need to make sure we've selected generative AI to use it. I'm going to draw around this little guy here and just get rid of him and just click apply and let Lightroom do its thing. And then just click close, and that's done a brilliant job. It's such a good feature. So the next thing I'm going to do is crop this. I'll probably go into a square crop just to help us get a bit of a better crop. But again, I want to avoid that separation of that background up there. I can maybe just pull this up a little bit so we're in there. That looks okay to me. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do then is I want to make this a black and white, and the reason why is because even though we've got this lovely light, and it's a lovely warm light, there isn't a lot of colour in this picture. There is only yellow and orange and a little bit of green, and it can be quite tricky to get this to look like a warm light. If we increase the white balance, you can see we're going to get this orange. It was a really weird time of day. It was coming into golden hour, but it wasn't quite there, so it was just before, and we get this mixture where it's got a lot of blue and a lot of yellow in it, and I personally don't like that. If it's golden hour, I want it to be a full-on golden hour. So because of that, I'm going to make it a black and white. Now we do have good light on this because the light is coming, you can see the sun was coming from camera left here across. So by making this black and white, we're going to bring out that contrast, and I think it could look really, really nice. So let's have a look at our options. So we've got the black and whites here within Lightroom, which offer us all different types of tones. We could completely manually do everything, but I think as a starting point, we might as well use what Lightroom suggests, because some of them are pretty good. Some of them are horrendous, some of them are pretty good. So they've obviously got a lot of grayness. So the black and white 07, I think, is probably where I'd want to go. And we can change the amount as well. So I'm going to push that up a little bit because I do like contrasting imagery. It's about there. So coming over to the tone then, this is where I'm going to pull and push and just see what the picture wants us to do. And what I don't want to do is completely pull out the shadows, because I'm going to flatten the image. So I think they're pretty much sat to where they need to be. They are maybe just tweaking a little bit, so somewhere around there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of clarity to this, and I'll probably bring that texture down a little bit to around 10. I don't want to over process that too much. And we can come in here now and we can change some of the tones. So even though it's a black and white image, the colors are still in there. Lightroom can still detect them colors, and that's a really powerful way of getting some really nice tones by just adjusting these colors. And you can see what that's giving us. So these aren't, there'll be nothing in there. Let's bring the detail up to 50 for the sharpening, and then the masking, and hold the Alt Option key down and just pull that up, and I'll probably push that right up to around there. So just the white areas are going to be sharpened, nothing in the black will be sharpened, and that's just going to help us pull out a little bit more detail on the bird there. And we could probably bring this up to around 45 and there. I'm going to add a little bit of noise reduction in the luminance and in the color, just a little bit, just because we have manipulated some of that color there. Okay, so the next thing then is I want to do some dodging and burning on this, because we can see here on the feathers, we can see there's all this detail here, and that just needs to be pulled out a little bit. So let's select our brush tool, and I'm going to make sure the feather is down low, the flow is down low, and the density is down low. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller, tick the overlay, and what I'm going to do is just paint in some of these areas here. So it's going to be a really light adjustment. So I'm going to press Command Z just to bring that back, because that was a little bit too much, that flow. So let me just bring that down, just bring that overlay back in, and just start painting. You can see there it's a little bit softer. You can barely see the color coming through. So what I'm going to do is just highlight, or go over the highlights. That's all I'm interested in doing, just to add that depth. Like I talk about most weeks, depth is achieved by tones, not color. So we can add more depth to this picture and make it look a little bit more three-dimensional just by bringing out these highlights and creating shadows. So we've got a lot of black within the picture, so I'll need to address that as well. But these areas here are quite nice, and I think just pulling out the detail in some of these feathers just make the image pop a little bit. That's it. So we just need to make sure we're blending this properly, so we haven't got straight lines. Just want to go into small circles around here, and then maybe on the leg there, but that is in shadow a little bit. So let's just make that a little bit more dense, and we'll do that just by going over the area more than once. That's it. So that looks like a pretty good selection on the body there. Let's just come up to the head around here, and I'll probably do the rest of that separate. So let's just take the overlay off and reset that contrast back to 0. I'm just going to pull this exposure up a little bit and just push that a little bit more. And because I've made such a small adjustment, I can just push these up in small increments. So I'm pushing the highlights, pushing the shadows up. There we go. And I was going to add a little bit of contrast into there as well. So if we look at what that's done, you can see it's a very small adjustment. That's just bringing out them highlights. So I'm actually going to push that up a little bit more. And again, you can see there's a before and after. So it's a really small adjustment. So let's create a new mask and go to brush. And what I want to do is just pull out, so I'm going to get this overlay on, I just want to pull out a little bit of detail here, because there is detail there. I don't want it to be that dark. I want the shadow to make sense. I don't want it to just go into black. So there, and then let's just pull the shadows up a little bit. There we go. There you go, you can just see the eye popping through now. So if we look at just quickly at the before and after, you can see straight away what that's doing. It's just adding a little bit more shape to it, and we're still keeping where the highlights are from the sun around here. So it's very minimal. Now, if we wanted to do some more advanced dodging and burning, then this would need to come into Photoshop. And we can certainly do that, and it's a very quick process rather than doing it within Lightroom. So I'm going to bring this into Photoshop and quickly show you how I would do this. So I would duplicate this, so Control Command J, and then come down to the bottom, come to the curves adjustment, and I'm just going to push this up, click on the X, Control Command I to invert that, select the brush tool, make sure my foreground color is set to white. Come up to the top here, select a soft brush, so its hardness is at 0. I'm going to push the flow up to around 40%, and I'm going to come in, and all I'm going to do now is just paint over the highlighted areas of the image just to add this depth. So with the dodging and burning, we can darken areas as well, but because this is got side light, the areas that are in shadow are quite dark, and you can see that. So I wouldn't really need to do that step, I would just need to highlight areas just to bring out this highlights, and you can see where they all are here. And again, this is a really quick process. It doesn't have to take you hours and hours and hours. It's just selecting where these highlights are. So let's come up to the bird and let's just work on some of these areas here. So I'll probably bring out some of that detail there, and here, the back of the legs, and there. And you can see where it's asking to be done all along here, around the chin, and around the eye there, and just this little sort of, got this lovely light coming around the side of him there. So if we look at that, you can see what that's done, and again, that's adding depth. So if we want to add more depth to this, then what we address is this background here. So I'm going to go over some of these areas here, and the difference from what this is going to do now is what's going to make the image pop. So it's not just about the subject, it is about the surrounding areas and how the eye is brought into the picture. So we can almost lighten areas where we want the eye to come in. So I'm almost making a visible line of where I want that eye to flow around into the picture, and it becomes a subconscious thing then that your eye just follows. So you can almost draw, like hold the option key down, you can see that I've almost drawn like a golden ratio back into the bird, and that's just going to bring everything out and make the eye just follow that. So even though I said we wouldn't need to do the dark areas, we can do them. It is an important step. So let's just do the same, Control Command I to invert that. And then what I would do is just darken the shadow. So I'm going to bring this flow down a little bit, and it would just be these areas here, just to add a little bit more depth. And remember that we can change this as well, the opacity, in a minute. So let's just go up there, around here, darken this here, darken this down here. So I like that because it's just gradating into them darker areas there. And then let's just darken some of these feathers back in, and it's only a little bit that it needs around here. There we go. So let's come to the opacity and just bring that down to about 80%. I'm going to do the same with this one at 90%. So we can see that them darker areas there, what that's doing, again, that's adding a little bit more depth. I'm going to bring that back up actually because that needs a little bit more. There we go. And if you look at the before and after of that, so the highlights there just pulling out there. So let's say File and then say bring that back into Lightroom, and then we can just finish this off quickly by adding again a little bit more contrast. So I can add some contrast in using the slider, but more importantly come down to the tone curve here, and this is now we can separate these tones because we've just done the work by separating them by dodging and burning. We can now just adjust these and we'll get a bit of a better end result. So let's just push these up, push the mid-tones up a little bit, shadows there. That's it. That looks good. Okay, so let's add a radial, and all I want to do is just add a radial into there. It's on soft so that it's feathered, and I'm just going to bring the exposure up a little bit to around there, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette to this. So I'm going to come down to the bottom, just bring that vignette in, And I'm actually going to make the feather so it's not, I'm going to bring the feather down just so you can see what I'm doing with that here. So I want the midpoint to be around there, and I want to change the roundness so it goes that way. And then feather that back out. Just pull that out a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to remove chromatic abrasion, enable profiles. So I shot this on a Tamron, and it was there, yep, good. And then I'm going to add a little bit of sharpening to this. I'm going to keep the detail up at 50, sharpening to around 21, masking, hold the Alt Option key down. Again, just sharpening that up a little bit more there because we've had some contrast into it. Okay, so that would be it. That would be the final result. So if we look at that full screen, you can see what we've got. Yeah, I really like that. It's moody, it's dark, and yeah, I think it just helps when you've got that weird time between golden hour and when it's just starting to kick into golden hour and it's not quite there. Sometimes you can get some really nice moody black and white images of that. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that's given you something. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.